England get their players together for maybe 6 weeks a year. Ireland and New Zealand face the same problem. Rossi Erasmus looked at that reality and built something completely different, and it's the reason back-to-back World Cup wins make total sense once you look under the bonnet of how this squad actually operates. The number that changes everything is 70. Rossi has just named 70 players in his Springbok structures for 2026, 49 domestic players attending an in-person alignment camp in Cape Town, with 21 overseas-based players brought in virtually. That's not a squad, that's a franchise. Every other top-tier nation is cycling through a pool of maybe 30 to 35 players. South Africa is building a system around 70, and they've been doing it for years. The alignment camps aren't new, they're the engine room of the whole operation, and nobody is really talking about how significant they are. It's not just training runs and line-out calls at these camps. Rossi and his coaching staff sit every single one of those players down in a boardroom and walk them through the full macro plan for the season, the culture, the standards, the expectations for each week of a test campaign. So when an injury happens 3 months later and a player gets called up, he's not walking in cold. He already knows the language. He already knows the systems. He already knows what Rossi demands from someone wearing the green and gold. That is a genuine structural advantage no other rugby nation has figured out, or at least hasn't committed to replicating. Compare that to how England actually works. A player needs to prove himself in the Premiership week in, week out before he gets a look in. The fans demand it, the media demand it, and coaches feel the pressure to respond to form. That's not necessarily wrong, it's just a completely different philosophy. France has almost the inverse problem. The top 14 pays for everything, player salaries, club infrastructure, the lot, which makes the club season king. It runs for 10 months, and players are flogging themselves before the national team even gets a look in. By the time a World Cup comes around, French bodies are often broken by the sheer volume of rugby played getting there. South Africa doesn't have that problem, and it's not an accident. This is where it gets interesting, and to be fair, a little controversial. Some of the biggest names in South African rugby, your Skilses, your Evans, your Pietersteffs, don't always go absolutely flat out in the URC every single week. In England or France, that would get you dropped, but Rossi doesn't panic because he knows exactly what those players are capable of when test rugby comes around. He said it himself, he needs to know what someone's ceiling is, but he also needs a high floor of consistency. Pieter-Steph du Toit became World Rugby Player of the Year in 2024, precisely because he delivers that every single week in green and gold. You know what you're getting. But here's what nobody's connecting. When senior players manage their minutes, it creates space. Makazole Mapimpi at the Sharks steps back slightly, and suddenly Yaku Williams gets an opportunity on the wing. The Fincham brothers get more game time, get noticed, and now both are in an alignment camp. The ecosystem feeds itself. The load management of the veterans creates the development pathway for the next generation. That's a club mentality applied to an international team, and it's working. In 2024, Rossi used 50 different players across 13 tests. He won 11 of those 13, with both losses coming by a single point. His win rate was 84.6%. He scored 57 tries, gave 12 players their debut caps, and finished the year ranked #1 in the world. That is not a happy accident. That is a system designed to absorb rotation without losing quality, and no other coaching staff on the planet is doing this at that scale and winning at that rate simultaneously. Now in 2026, that system is expanding again. The 21 overseas players in the virtual alignment camp include Herschel Jontjes out of Bayonne, Lucanio Am back in the mix, and JJ van der Mescht over at Northampton Saints, along with former junior Springbok prop Brock Harris at Bordeaux. JJ van der Mescht is particularly fascinating. He was close to qualifying for France before moving to England. He's enormous, a powerful carrier in the mold of Eben Etzebeth, not a line-out jumper but more of a carrying lock who makes life miserable for opposition scrums and carries all day. Rossi might use him as a 20-minute impact option off the bench, a very specific job at the back end of a tight test match. But there's another layer to having players like Jonquils and JJ based in France, while France are flying at the top of their game. It would be naive to think Rossi isn't extracting intelligence from that. France just won back-to-back Six Nations titles. He will want to know everything. And this is the point where the really controversial call needs to be made. Rossi's willingness to lose in the short term in order to ultimately win is the single most underrated coaching quality in world rugby right now. Other coaches talk about depth and rotation, but then panic when results dip and revert to their best 15. Rossi doesn't. He used 35 of the 36 players on the end-of-year tour alone. The opposition view that you should always put your strongest team out is a legitimate position, but the proof is in what it produces. Back-to-back World Cups and an 84.6% win rate while rotating relentlessly. The argument against it doesn't really hold up anymore. Zoom out even further, because the geography of South Africa's rugby calendar is something no other nation can replicate. The URC means South African franchises play regularly against European clubs, Leinster, Saracens, Munster, the lot. So players are match-hardened in Northern Hemisphere conditions before they even arrive for July tests. Then the Rugby Championship gives them the South American battles, New Zealand, Australia, Argentina. Different styles, different climates, different pressure. And now with the Nations Championship coming in, they get both simultaneously. Every box is ticked. Japan is worth mentioning here too, because it's genuinely clever. For older players who need to stay sharp but can't absorb a full 10-month top 14 season, Japan is the answer. Shorter season, high intensity, lower volume. Still competitive, still paying well. It keeps veterans fit, fresh, and available for July and November windows without grinding their bodies into the ground. France's issue, and they are a serious threat for 2027, let's be clear, is that their top 14 clubs are paying the wages, so those clubs expect minutes. There's a structural tension between club and country in France that South Africa has essentially eliminated by making the Springbok system the financial and cultural heartbeat of the whole game down there. Because that's the real foundation of all of this. Back around 2016 and 2017, South African rugby was in a dark place, with interest drifting and the Springbok brand struggling. Now, the commercial operation behind the team is worth more than it has ever been. New sponsors, higher ticket prices, and money flowing back down into the provincial and club structure. That means more resources for coaches, better facilities for the schoolboy system, and it funds the very pipeline that keeps producing the next Cheslin Colby, the next Cody Bach, the next Sasha Feinberg Ngozima. The Springboks winning funds the Springboks winning. That's about as self-sustaining a model as you'll find in world sport. The player pipeline doesn't stop at the senior squad either. Marcus Mueller, still in the junior Springbok system, just received his first alignment camp invitation for 2026. South Africa won the Junior World Championship in 2025, and those players are already on Rossi's radar before they've even played a full professional club season. Riley Norton, the Junior World Championship winning captain, was in the 49-man domestic camp. That's the depth of the pipeline, and it doesn't stop at the borders. Players who go abroad to France, England, or Japan stay in the system. The door never closes. No national team in rugby runs it quite like this. Now look at 2026 and the road to the 2027 Rugby World Cup in Australia. The schedule is brutal. The Nations Championship puts them against England, Scotland, and Wales in July, before flipping in November to France, Italy, and Ireland. Then there are 4 tests against New Zealand in the rugby's greatest rivalry series, one of which is in Baltimore in the United States, 12,800 kilometers from home. No easy fixtures, no softer games to blood the newcomers. Every game is a proper challenge. So yes, there will be rotation, and yes, there will be the odd defeat, but that's the bet Rossi has always been willing to make. Lose some games in service of winning the only one that ultimately matters. Every single structural advantage is already in place heading into that World Cup cycle. More contact time than any rival. A squad of 70 players all speaking the same language before the season even starts. Veterans managing their minutes so that young players get real game time and real experience. Overseas players providing intelligence from top 14 boardrooms and premiership training grounds, junior players winning world championships and stepping straight into senior alignment camps, a financial model where Springbok success funds Springbok success. Even Etzebeth, with 132 test caps, the most in Springbok history, still setting the standard for what carrying the jersey looks like across a decade. The rest of the world isn't standing still. Ireland are smart and organized, France are threatening and now solving their aerial game, England's scrum and maul is probably the closest thing globally to matching the Springboks in those contact areas, and Australia are rebuilding faster than most expected. But none of them are operating the way South Africa operates. None of them have the same contact time, the same depth of squad, the same pipeline from schools to test rugby, or the same alignment between financial sustainability and on-field dominance. That combination doesn't appear by itself. Rossi Erasmus designed it deliberately, piece by piece, over 7 years, 3 World Cups in 12 years, back-to-back champions, #1 in the world rankings, an 84.6% win rate while rotating through 50 different players in a single season. That's the headline, but the real story is the structure underneath it, the 70-man league.